Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse. We got a transitional week, one with a Tate McRae album bomb, and it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. Yeah, this feels like a weird week on the Hot 100. Not precisely a bad one, kind of transitional than outright awful. And most of that comes from fleeting goodwill I have towards Tate McRae putting out her best album to date, and then actually delivering a small album bomb to the charts. Imagining thinking that was possible 4 years ago. Couple that with Drake and Party Next Door leaving some residual impact on the Hot 100, and it feels like the charts might be in a bit of an unstable place until we get a larger, lasting shakeup. And that's probably most reflected in the top 10 by how much it feels like so little's actually moved in 2025, because Luther by Kendrick Lamar and SZA is holding the number one. It's not surprising, the radio growth is continuing in earnest, it dominates streaming, even if the sales aren't really there, it is on the upswing, but not that far behind is Die With A Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars at number 2, and this is going to be a margins game. It's slightly better sales and on the radio, but it's lagging just enough on streaming for Kendrick to have the edge, and speaking of which, Not Like Us slid down to number 3 because while streaming is rock solid, you can tell the radio is kinda done with this one. But TV Off by Kendrick Lamar and Lefty Gunplay appears to still have traction at number 4. It's actually getting a radio push to match its great streaming, just a little bit slower. And then we had a game that to me was a real surprise. A bar song Tipsy by Shaboozie's back up to number 5 because apparently just enough of a good week on streaming and still ruling the radio, that's gonna put you there. Hell, it leapt over Apartment by Rose and Bruno Mars, which is also up to number 6 thanks to a good streaming week, but I think it may have peaked on the radio. And I can also say that for the slight recovery for Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish up to number 7, which saw a positional rebound thanks to decent enough streaming, although the loss of Drake was probably the bigger factor in the top 10. Speaking of which, Drake being out of the top 10 caused 2 more songs to return. The first being Pink Pony Club by Chappell Roan up at number 8. The streams are up big and the radio push is finally in full gear, gotta like to see it. And Lose Control by Teddy Swims is still at number 9 because even with a good streaming week, this has radio presence that just will not die. Finally, Squabble Up by Kendrick Lamar slid down to number 10, where the radio might be there, but the streaming is basically not moving, so it slid back rather sharply amidst all the gains all around it. Just doesn't have that same momentum. And that naturally takes us to our losers and dropouts. And we have a considerable number of both. 2 album bombs in a row are gonna knock out songs with longer traction, like Guy For That by Post Malone featuring Luke Combs, or Vilda by Bad Bunny, Omar Courtz and Dai-V, or Tuboda by Oscar Maiden and Fuerza Regida, the last of which might just sneak onto the year-end list for 2025. Now for our losers, look, the story is the album bomb from last week, but Hey Now by Kendrick Lamar featuring Doechii did see a slight drop off to 95, and Off the Deluxe Fading from Sabrina Carpenter, Please 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 slipped down to 36, and Busy Woman fell to 52. But okay, let's be real, this is the Drake and Party Next Door show, so top down, Gimme a Hug by Just Drake hit 28, CN Tower at 60, Somebody Loves Me at 61, Something About You hit 72, Deeper with Just Party Next Door hit 78, Mothballs at 86, Raining in Houston by Just Drake at 87, Spider-Man Superman at 91, Pimmy's Dilemma with Technically Just Pimmy at 94, and Small Town Fame with Just Drake at 97. So okay, you would expect then to be a lot of gains and returns post-album bomb, right? Yeah, there was certainly a lot less than I expected, with Two Hands by Tate McRae being kind of expected off her release going back to 76, but her other returns are all over the place. Mijalo by Fuerza Regida and Grupo Frontera at 81, a couple country stragglers like Backseat Driver by Kane Brown at 93, and Weren't for the Win by Ella Langley at 100. Even Headlock by Imogen Heap is back at 82, did not expect that. And I wish I could say there was much of a pattern for our gains, but they feel really scattered here too. So let's start off with the tracks from last week that managed to hold firm and were actually able to pick up ground. Who by Jimin bounced up to 33, Liar by Jelly Roll hit 35, Worst Way by Riley Green really has Nashville radio traction at 59, and Mutt by Leon Thomas rose to 67. Then we have the expected Tate McRae boost for Sports Car up huge to 16, and a few lingering Bad Bunny album bomb cuts holding their own, like DTMF at 30 and Bala Inolvidable at 39. Now for the rest, well, Sailor Song by Gigi Perez rose to 38. No One Noticed by the Marias still holding us a sleeper hit at 41. I Never Lie by Zach Top having considerable groundswell at 46. Smile by Morgan Wallen sticking around at 48. I'm Gonna Love You by Cody Johnson and Carrie Underwood at 51. Indigo by Sam Barber and Avery Anna at 55. Good News by Shabuzi getting a nice boost to 63, living up to its title. I Ain't Saying by Jordan Davis up to 65, and Loco by Net and Vegas at 66. But again, we are in album bomb territory, albeit a small one, so we're going to cover the Tate McRae songs in the top 40, the best, and the worst. Outside those, Greenlight at 99, Like I Do at 90, Signs at 74, Blood on My Hands with Flo Milli at 64, very nearly dishonorable mention, Miss Possessive at 54, and Dear God at 44. Alright, makes this a little bit more reasonable. Thus, for our new arrivals, let's start things off with number 89, Little Things by Ella Mai.
And let you know just how you make me proud. The good times make up for the bad ones. I see you trying and I don't know how.
I remember being surprised in 2022 that Ella Mai was still able to get a charting song, and I'm even more surprised 3 years later that this is charting from her EP from last year. Yes, the DJ Mustard cosign has more staying power outside of Kendrick Lamar. And for this brand of mid-tempo, slow burn 2000s R&B with the gentle acoustics behind the thicker bass and sharper percussion, where she talks about wanting to do the little things for her partner who she loves dearly, yeah, it's pretty sweet. Definitely domestic, which is not going to be everyone's taste, but it feels sincere enough. But we're now multiple projects in with Ella Mai, and my real singular issue remains the same. Outside of her limitations as an expressive singer, where she just doesn't sound as engaged with a lot of songs as I'd like her to be, I can't stand how her voice is produced, how touched up and compressed she sounds at the very front of the mix. She doesn't sound warm or comfortable, and for a track like this, you kinda need that. And when you factor in some of those weedy flourishes in the melody midway back, yeah, no, not on board. It's not as bad as One Direction's Little Things, but that's not saying much. Number 83, LV Bag by Don Toliver, J-Hope, Pharrell, and Speedy.
Yeah, 2 doors open, I'm in and out. Ain't no been high, ain't no been high. I wanna.
Okay, I know what you're thinking, and I think some clarification is required for who is credited on this song. Because Don Toliver and J-Hope are on vocals and Pharrell's producing. Who the hell is Speedy? Well, apparently Speedy is the name that Don Toliver gave to his Louis Vuitton bag, and for some asinine reason, Billboard gave the bag a credit, likely as a way for the splits in the song to fall more in Don Toliver's favor. I mean, I already expected this to be a glorified advertisement with that title. This is just shoving it in our faces. And to the surprise of nobody, the song's crap. The atonal warbles of synth that clash with the lumbering bass and trap knock, where the drum fidelity's just all over the place, where Don Toliver brings no actual intensity or flair to his delivery outside the brief refrains. J-Hope is just a non-presence, and the lyrics are the same tepid brand name flexing, where it's not even all Louis V, which reminds me of the rappers who used to get deals based off of specific brand names mentioned in their songs. I'm fairly certain that still happens in certain corners of the industry, and I wonder why we as a culture just kind of stopped talking about it. It feels relevant for our songs to be glorified advertisements. The only reason this exists is brand placement. It's some of Pharrell's worst work in recent memory. Nobody brought their A game, and you gotta wonder if the bag got credit because it put in as much effort as everyone else here. For the love of God, skip this. Number 75, ExtraL by Jennie and Doechii.
Staring at the stars, attitude, so to start. Big moves, only extra large.
Okay, I'm willing to put aside the Dominic Fike collab as a momentary misfire. Mantra's still pretty good. I think Jennie has potential. I'm actually a bit excited to cover her new album dropping this Friday. And pairing her with a talent like Doechii on the rise could be inspired. And man, even though I know this isn't for me, I'm just not impressed at all. What it reminds me of are the shouting girl boss songs that got real tired and stale in the mid-2010s, down to the trap flip that relies more on Blackpink-esque attitude than actual melody with the swampy bass, the cheap percussion, and the overdone compression, especially around the vocals. The hollow flexing that winds up punching down because it's playing within the same power structure, it's not changing anything. And a guest rapper who, yes, steals the show, but doesn't really deliver her best. Yeah, Doechii's fun, I like her verse, but she really highlights how Jennie needs a lot more swing and melody than she gets here. Doechii, on the other hand, can make more with less. Again, I know this is not for me, but I've also heard it done a lot the past decade plus, and it feels both dated and clunky. So yeah, not a favorite. Number 69, Clouds by J. Cole.
Head to the clouds, I ain't been stepping out, tired of sticking out in the crowd. This world is changing right in front of me. Gray hairs, I'm aging quicker than I thought I'd be.
I keep thinking it's been a while since I've been forced to talk about J. Cole, and then I check my records and realize he showed up a few too many times last year, often on features. And then I sigh because I'm just sick of the discourse as an ardent non-fan, mostly because it's trying to absolve him of responsibility for everything he's actually done and still think he's a top-tier MC. He still put out that garbage Might Delete Later album, he still backed out of the fight the same way he ran from smoke from No Name, and for as often as he now wants credit for that smart decision and living in peace, even as he talks slick about how he could beat down every other rapper, Cole, you can't have it both ways, especially when I got no reason to actually believe you. It's also why I believe he should engage in beef with Freddie Gibbs. Beat a competent opponent calling you out, if you actually can. It would send a strong message to the field and your detractors, especially as there's no reason that beef would go beyond wordplay, but he's not going to do that. Because A, my guess is that he'd lose, Gibbs is a better rapper across the board, and B, he's terrified of the loss of status that would come with it, wouldn't want the fall off to come too early. I say all that because if it wasn't J. Cole making the song, I might probably like it more. Flows are good. As a restatement of good rhyme construction, it's decently effective. I don't deny that Cole can rap technically pretty well, and I came around to the airy cascades of keys around the clipped spare percussion and the gentle cymbals. But for as much as J. Cole flexes about his ability to murder anything and anyone on the mic, and his caution and how it's all just not a game, I'm sorry, it's not credible anymore because I've seen how he moves, and by the time we get to the second verse, I'm a lot less impressed. Sure, I like the lines calling out billionaires who will eat up the proceeds of hip-hop talking about black trauma, as much as the lines about AI in the music industry, especially as he's getting older and seeing it all come to pass. But the line, I'm the bass in your trunk, the bullet that missed Trump, the gun that jammed because it seemed like God had other plans. I mean, it's hard not to look sideways at the implication of all that being God's plan. Certainly doesn't feel like the right climate for all that nonsense. And again, it's just more baseline observations where Cole offers no deeper commentary. He's trying to be observational, but offering no tangible insight. It doesn't speak more to me. I mean, I've never been that impressed with Cole's attempts to be conscious. This is no exception. It's just kind of mediocre. I'm gonna skip it. Number 58, Call Me When You Break Up by Selena Gomez, Benny Blanco, and Gracie Abrams.
That's the way we stay up. We talk about forever when I'm taking off my makeup.
Ever get the sinking feeling you recognize the marketing plan the second you hear about a song and who's featuring on it? Yeah, it's cynical on my part, but when I saw Selena Gomez with her partner Benny Blanco grab up Gracie Abrams because she's got a lot of buzz at the moment, I knew there was gonna be the TikTok push, especially when the song is barely over 2 minutes long. Now, the interplay here is the selling point, and to be fair for this sort of collab, it should be. Selena Gomez is playing the consoling friend to Gracie Abrams, who has just finished up a bad breakup and is openly spiraling, and Selena's offering to fill the gap in her life until Mr. Right comes along. Now, aside from the fact that the vocal interplay feels pretty much non-existent, I'm not sure this song has a credible release for its hook. It's got this brittle guitar line and sharper drums where it seems like it's building toward an explosive chorus, but it just never happens. And that's a real problem because this might be one of the worst produced pop songs I have heard in 2025. I imagine that the grainy edges around Selena Gomez's voice were intentionally lo-fi in order to fit with how the blaring synth and the arranged touches started intruding around the post-chorus. But then we get Gracie Abrams' voice, which sounds a little cleaner, but still has a lot of awkwardly mixed rough edges, and they just don't remotely match each other. When the compression is just pressed onto all of it, it sounds like it's running through a really shitty radio speaker. It sounds awful. This will only exist to go viral in the cheapest way possible, and it does not bode well for that upcoming Selena Gomez Benny Blanco collaboration project, especially if it's more crap like this. Number 53, Purple Lace Bra by Tate McRae. Alright, we're going to end off this week with 3 Tate McRae songs, and let's start with what I think is probably the best on the album, or at least her most conceptually ambitious. And some of that obvious is from the jump, with the elegant strings flipping into the rougher hip-hop knock. With some of those edges, it kind of reminds me a lot of something that would have caught traction just outside the mainstream in like the very early 2010s. But it's about the first time I found anything Tate McRae sung to be remotely credible in terms of broader sensuality, mostly because she's got a pretty good falsetto, and underplaying her voice works to her advantage with this sort of production. It's very Lana Del Rey. I go back and forth on whether that's a compliment, but it is the content that's taking the bigger risks here, highlighting how it seems like people will only pay attention to her or take her seriously when she's playing sexy, but that also contributes to how they will then devalue her opinions or only take what they want from her. And that's a tragic juxtaposition that's made all the more effective with the metatext of that largely being true about her artistic skill set. I mean, I'm paying attention, but the vast majority of men will not. As such, I'm not sure it fully works in all the tangled layers of the perception of sexuality, but it is intriguing, and I'm inclined to at least give it points there, and it is a very good song to boot. It's a deeper cut, but I think it's worth hearing. Check it out. Number 43, I Know Love by Tate McRae featuring the Kid LAROI.
I know love when it is, yeah, I know love, I know love.
So to say I had rock bottom expectations for this is an understatement. When there's a pop star couple, having them make a duet might seem like the label has a license to print money, but it often doesn't lead to much long-term success in both music and the relationship. So imagine my surprise that this wasn't bad at all. It's kind of a bit of a struggle to pin down why that is, because this is not normally something I would endorse. The choppy synths and the stuttered syllables, the bargain barrel love as drugs metaphor with goddamn Kid LAROI playing the romantic foil to Tate McRae, simultaneously riding the line between being bland and more explicit than it needs to be. But I think there is something to this that kind of works for me. The hook is quite melodically sound, it sticks for me. I like that the drums have more live energy, and there's also a balance to how both pop acts play off each other. Neither of them are A-listers, they kind of know that, and they're not trying to overpower the other. Thus, there's a more balanced chemistry that seems to actually kind of work. I'm not calling this great by any means, but you know what? I do think it's pretty good. I guess I'll take it. And finally, number 22, Revolving Door by Tate McRae.
But I just want you more, so I keep coming back like a revolving door. Say I want you less, but I just want you more.
And sadly, we're ending the Tate McRae tracks with the highest charting, and at least for me, one of the duds. The goopy synth behind a mix smothered in auto-tune and pitch shifting as the bass ramps up with the clicking percussion, where the vocal overdubs saturate more of the mix than any actual instrumental melody, which is not a good sign when the vocal cadence feels as choppy as it is on the verses. And you know, maybe that could work if you want a muggy song which inspires the headache of being caught up in a bad relationship that you just can't seem to break out of, spurred on by a lack of ability to concentrate because you're working way too hard on other things. And you know what? I don't think that contributes well to the hook where all the yearning for this to work is on display. As a whole, it just feels kind of confused. Mildly unpleasant even. It's not a terrible song, but one I got no desire to revisit. At all. And yeah, that ends our week. I gotta say it, Tate McRae is taking both the top spots here, with Purple Lace Bra as the best of the week, and I Know Love with Kid LAROI as the honorable mention. Never thought I'd say that. Worst of the week, yeah, Louis Vuitton bag with Don Toliver, Speedy, J-Hope, and Pharrell for feeling like so much of a nothing advertisement, with Call Me When You Break Up by Selena Gomez, Benny Blanco, and Gracie Abrams feeling a little bit more coherent, but sounding like utter shit, and desperate shit at that. Next week, I imagine more of this as the album bombs fade and we don't really have an obvious replacement, so stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.